Alright, I'm ready.
Let's do this!
Time to farm some dubs. Crap, I got a squad on my right.
I'm running in for backup.
Yo, Ron, he's right there in front of you.
Sorry guys, it happened again.
Damn. This is the 10th one today.
Alright, I'm back.
Someone cover me.
Yeah, I see you. You got him, you got him, you got him! Yes! Yo, that's sweet.
Yeah, it is. We about to win this.
Guys, I can get used to this.
HyperX alloy. Built strong because it has to be.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or good evening, and welcome to ORL Season 14, Round 12, the final round of the championship, as we make our way to Bahrain for the second time this season. Not the short circuit, but the long circuit. I'm Milky Cyril, joined by Jacob Alada Hancocks. And Jacob, how are you doing this fine Sunday afternoon, evening? I still don't know.
I'm doing very, very well, thank you. Yeah, slightly hoarse my voice, but hopefully that won't matter too much. I think it'll all sort itself out once we get into the swing of things. And yeah, it's been a great day of sport in general. The real life F1, the F2 has been very, very entertaining. So I'm sure we're going to have another thrilling race on our hands to round out the evening.
Yeah, and you mentioned that sport today has been interesting. Of course, Formula One has started. The real life Formula One coming through, and actually, surprisingly, someone was actually being for once an entertaining race. But I have a feeling that we're going to be able to top the entertainment scene in Formula One. Let's just have a quick recap then as to how the championship standings look heading into the final round of the season.
Yeah, indeed. And as you can see, it is Jarno Opmeer leading by an absolute country mile and a half out there at the front. Almost 100 points clear without the second place driver even making 100 points. So that is, yeah, quite something. So Jarno, I mean, hats off to him once again. He's obviously already won the championship going into this last round. There's no way Caraton can make up the, 85 points needed? No, in fact, 87 points needed to even get even with Jarno Opmeer. So yeah, it is really a battle between Caraton, Kruti, and Haddad over second position that we're going to be keeping our eyes on here today.
That is the big battle. Patrick Kruti has been, I guess, Mr. Consistent over the course of the season, always able to pick up the points, but Alvaro Caraton, we know he has pace, and recently was able to pick up that P2 at Monza when all of the punctures started flying in. We'll see whether we get more punctures here at Bahrain. Also want to give a quick point out that there is a charity currently running, and we are pushing donations towards it, being sponsored by Codemasters. You can find all the links for that down in the description below, where you can find out how to donate, more about the cause, etc. But with that said, we are jumping on into qualifying now, so we're going to be jumping in for a quick commercial break, and when we're back we'll have the entire qualifying live and uninterrupted to the very end. Stay tuned.
What sound experience would you like today?
I'll have the fantasy pack.
Good choice.
And could you make it a Cloud 2 wireless?
On his way, sir.
Sounds amazing!
The HyperX Cloud 2 Wireless. Legendary comfort goes wireless.
Hey man, I just can't find a comfortable headset. I mean, I've tried everything. Literally everything.
Sheesh, my brother. I got you.
The HyperX Cloud 2 Wireless. Legendary comfort goes wireless.
That is comfortable.
Alright then, ladies and gentlemen, as we jump on in for the first session. Well, I say first session. There is only one session of qualifying, 18 minutes, and we already have most of the field out for their outlaps. Alessio Di Capua is the only man out on the medium set of tyres. Everyone else opting for the softest of the compounds with those red-walled soft tyres.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, this could suggest actually that Alessio isn't planning to start the race on medium tires. Now, usually, of course, you'd think, oh, well, it means he might want to start on the medium tires, but he might just be saving sets of soft tires for later. If you want to go for a medium tire start, you wouldn't tend to go out first time round on those medium tires when the track's at its slowest. You usually wait till the track improvement has come through once you've got your eye in a bit as well, and then go out on the mediums to try and nail a lap on that tire. But that being said, it could still go in that direction for Alessio, and it's possible he hasn't even made his own mind up yet. The only driver, or the first driver to start a flying lap here today is Joni Tormala, who is once again back with us in the AlphaTauri.
And Alessio Di Capua almost made contact. I believe that was Patrick Cruti. Indeed it was, as Alessio Di Capua came past. And, well, this actually seems somewhat reminiscent of the F1 qualifying from yesterday, where they were all bunching up. And I believe it was Nikita Mazepin who decided to overtake them all to get right to the front of the queue. And Alessio Di Capua, he says, you know what? I can't be asked. I'm going to jump right on into the pits. Let's ride on board then with Felipe Sousa, the Brazilian, to start his first hot lap of the session.
Yeah, he's someone who's had a couple of really good qualifyings throughout the season. A driver who, in general, has been a midfield driver, but on some occasions has really had a great weekend. And we'll be hoping for one final one of those to round out the season here in round 12 of the ORL first split. And right now, through the first sector, it's a 27.4. I think that's a respectable sector time there, if not exactly lighting up the world for Felipe. The Brazilian in the Haas continuing on with the lap there on the exit of turn 8, so getting the power down into 10. One of the toughest corners, if not the toughest corner on the whole F1 calendar, but not a problem for the Brazilian as he gets it turned in nicely, heading in towards the final sector of the lap just after turn 11 here.
And through 11, you can carry so much speed. You have to be committed through 12 and into 13. Stay away from the curb, as it will cause the rear end to step out into 14. Another one of these corners where you can carry so much speed. And this final sector of Bahrain is all about just having that commitment and hoping that the car just sticks down and that you can find the grip as you make your way into the final corner. Just slightly riding the curb on apex. And around the final corner to complete your lap. 24.1 is the target benchmark from Jarno Opmeer. And Felipe puts in a 24.5, a respectable time at the very least for the Brazilian.
Yeah, he's ahead of some pretty quick drivers there. And as the field starts to fill out with more drivers coming across the line, he's remaining up there in 4th. So nice lap from Felipe. And it's only a tiny bit faster than his teammate Gettoned in the other Haas as well. So both of those drivers with a good opening to their qualifying accounts here in the final race of the season. But Jarno Opmeer is still the driver at the very top, and it's not even terribly close. He's actually at top by almost 0.2 of a second over Alvaro Carreton right now. Joshua Dowu sitting there in 3rd. He's going to be hoping that he can have a much cleaner weekend than he did when he had a rather woeful time at the Bahrain short circuit when he went for the wrong strategy and got it all wrong on that occasion.
And also when we talk about the championship, remember it's Daniela Haddad, Patrick Cruti and Alvaro Carreton. Patrick Cruti actually for once having a decent qualifying session. He's all the way up in P5 and just a couple of tenths down on Alvaro's lap time. Tom 97 though is pushing for his first hot lap. Only sitting down in P20 and qualifying didn't quite go his way last time out in Monza.
Indeed, yeah. Tom has had a couple of good weekends and a couple of bad weekends throughout the season. Sometimes it depends, of course, for many drivers. It depends on how much practice you can do in the week building up to it, particularly the couple of days building up to the event as well. So sometimes you see fluctuating performances for that sort of reason. But Tom will be keen to try and get a decent lap together here for the banker lap, at least at the beginning of qualifying, as he's on his way towards the end of Sector 2 right now, turning into that turn 11. It's really calm on board with Tom here. He doesn't sort of launch the car into the corners in the way some drivers do, but he never seems to have that much trouble with the rear end either. It's generally quite a smooth experience on board with Tom 97. Slight correction there on the exit of turn 13, but nothing that will have cost him anything more than maybe half a tenth. And he's gone for too much of a wide entry in the entry to the final corner there, and as a result has invalidated his lap, and he'll head straight back into the pits. Oh, never mind. Very last minute call to actually stay out instead, but he has still invalidated. So I'm not really sure what that's all about.
That was very intriguing from Tom 97. He must have a lot of fuel on board if he can do essentially a third outlap, because that would have invalidated, I think, even this lap as well.
It did, and not only did it invalidate, but he was crawling over the start-finish line, so it would have been a useless lap anyway. Also, his fuel light is red and blinking, so I'm not too sure he has got a lot of fuel in, so I really don't know why Tom has stayed out here, but I guess he's just wanting to get more rubber down on the track before heading back in. He's still got plenty of time left in the session, as Alessio Di Capua is up there now in second, narrowly behind Jarno Opmeer, but bridging the gap between Opmeer and the rest of the field, but still not quite challenging the Dutchman.
Tom 97 usually jumps in for interviews post-race. Maybe we can ask him, but Alessio Di Capua, a strong lap. Alessio tends to perform very well in qualifying, and we're seeing him right up towards the sharp end. He was able to secure pole last time out in Monza, but contact between himself and Nicolas Longuet into the Roger chicane saw the Italian pretty much done and dusted from the race, and he wasn't able to really recover. So he's going to be hoping to come back in strong. But Danny Haddad on a lap, and he's making his way down into Sector 3. One of the only, quick drivers out there who is yet to set a lap.
Indeed, yeah, definitely someone we'd expect to be popping up towards the top end of the order with this lap time once he comes in, as he now enters the final corner. He's a little bit off Jarno Opmeer's times in the second sector in particular, so I wouldn't expect him to take pole with this. And indeed, he slots in just there in P4, narrowly behind Alvaro Caraton, but in very good company nevertheless.
Now I'm riding on board with Jake Benham in the Alfa Romeo. Remember, Jake was able to finish P3 in Monza. His debut race secured a podium. Let's see what he can do here at Bahrain. We'll be needing to get at least into the low 24s. And, well, 24.5 right in the middle and just behind Filippo.
Yeah, it's a decent first effort, but with the another set of laps ready to come through from the other drivers, I'd expect that to fall down a little bit before Jake can set another lap time. So maybe not quite where they would like to be, but a decent lap nevertheless. Jarno Opmeer is out there on a second flying lap now. So why don't we take a look at the Dutchman as he tries to extend his gap at the very top of the field. He's slightly down on his own time in Sector 1, but nevertheless it's in the right sort of area. Let's see what he can manage through Sector 2 here.
Flings the car in then for turn 11 and through 12 into 13. This is where Sector 2 ends, and we'll get an idea. 800ths up. So Jarno Opmeer is going to be on the cusp of breaking into the 23s, and that would be a very impressive time to say the least. Just a final corner remaining then. Uses up all of the track. Again, just clip the apex, back end steps out, and Jarno Opmeer is going to head right back into the pits.
Yeah, just made that mistake towards the very end of the lap. There was some improvement, but it was only slight through the first two sectors. So Jarno won't feel too bad about having to sack that lap in and going again. It is interesting, actually, because it's the second sector of this lap, which admittedly is the longest sector and the most technical sector. But nevertheless, that is where Jarno Opmeer is gaining the most time on his rivals in the rest of the field. Josh Idowu is the second closest driver to him there. But Jarno is the only one who's managed to get a 35.9, whereas most of the other drivers through there are in around the 36.1 or 36.2.
I've just spotted a flying Finn, Jacob. Joni Torbala is here tonight joining us. He has backed out of this lap. He was actually 1.5 tenths up at the end of Sector 1, but he has been forced to abandon his lap. One man who hasn't abandoned his lap is the Hungarian Bence Sabo Konyi, currently down in P13, 4 tenths up. This is going to be a very quick lap across the line at 24.2, nearly topping the timing sheets.
Yeah, not only have we seen Bence Sabo Konyi getting up there in second, but CRG Patrick Shipos has gone up there into fourth as well. So the Hungarians finding a bit of pace all of a sudden here in this field. And that's probably an indicator to some of the other drivers that the track has improved a significant amount now. So I'm surprised that Jarno Opmeer wasn't improving by more if the likes of Bence Sabo Konyi and Patrick are getting closer to him. They're very quick drivers, don't get me wrong. But Jarno Opmeer, we would expect to be a little more than half a tenth quicker than Bence Sabo Konyi.
We've got two of the flying Hungarians. I was actually speaking to a certain Norbert Jakob not too long ago, and we were just bringing up the idea of the strong Hungarians, and I'm pretty sure it was essentially Danny Bereshne, as you could imagine, Patrick Sipos, Patrick Benz, and I believe Bence Sabo Konyi. Those are, I guess, the 4 flying Hungarians that currently exist on the F1 game.
Yeah, and you got a couple others as well. I mean, Kevin Bolash as well. He's there in the Challenger Series, knocking on the door as well. Not quite at the level of the likes of Patrick Schippos quite yet, but he's sort of in and around. So, yeah, it is interesting, actually. They tend to be a bit of a sort of overrepresented nation, the Hungarians. They seem to punch above their weight in general, population-wise. And compared to only having one real-life F1 driver, Hungarian, thus far, in the form of Zsolt Baumgartner back in, I think, 2004 for Minardi, maybe 2005?
How do you remember
a long
that?
time ago. Pardon?
How do you remember that fact?
I don't know. I just remember that fact. Zsolt Baumgartner drove for Minardi in, I want to say, 2004. I'm pretty sure about that.
That is impressive. I have not... Just so our viewers know, this was not a scripted conversation. I did not plan on bringing this up, so how you came up with that, I don't know. And how Alessio Di Capua pulled out a 24.142, I don't know, because he's 200s clear of Jarno Opmeer, and he's going to take the slightly shorter distance to make his way back to the pits.
Yeah, it's interesting again because he is gaining his time on Jarno in the first sector of the lap. That's where he's slightly quicker. But in the second sector, he's still not quite matching the sort of times Jarno is able to do. It is actually Ben Sarukonyi, who's now the other driver, down into the 35s for that middle sector, which is really, really tricky. One of the toughest sectors on the F1 game, particularly with this turn 10 that Jarno Opmeer is just coming up to now on his third attempt here to try and set a proper flying lap in the Mercedes. His first one was all right. The second one, he had to back out of it. And this third one's sitting pretty for now. I think the first sector was okay. Nothing too special. Let's see what it is as he's coming up to the split time for the end of the second sector right now through turn 12, easy flat. And what's it going to be? Oh. Wow, okay, he's 2/10 up. So that is another masterclass of a second sector for Jarno Opmeer as he's heading down towards his final corner of the lap.
Remember, on his previous lap, he lost the rear end on the exit of the corner. That will not happen this time round. Doesn't look the quickest from Jarno Opmeer, but I don't think he's lost 2/10. He'll lose a couple of hundredths, a 23.99 for the first driver, maybe the only driver to make it into the 23s tonight.
Yeah, definitely the first. That much we can say for certain. And bit of an indicator of how much faster this track is on the game compared to real life. Of course, the real life F1 cars did get a bit slower this year, but the pole time, I think, yesterday for the real life Grand Prix was in the 130s, unless I'm very much mistaken. So it's a big delta, actually, between the in-game lap and the real life version. And Jarno Opmeer being the one to make that delta as wide as possible. Patrick Kruti just came through and set a lap time, managed to improve up to a 1:24.293. Getting closer to his teammate, but only there in fourth for the time being.
And everyone diving on into the pits and now, and the big names that currently aren't as high up as they would like to be, the likes of Joni Tormala down in P10, Josh Idowu, Danny Haddad, Alvaro Caraton, P8, P7, P6 respectively. And probably as well, you'd include the likes of Jacob Benham in that list, currently in P13. Remember, he finished his debut race last weekend in Monza back in third.
Yeah, indeed. So someone that we'd expect to see a bit further up the order come the end of this qualifying session. Other than that, though, there's not really too many drivers standing out. Steve, I'd expect to be a bit higher as well. Another Hungarian in this field, we should say. And someone who impressed whenever we last saw him. Was it in Suzuka that we last saw Steve, unless I'm very much mistaken? Something along those lines. Either way, I remember being impressed with his performance when we did last see him. Ah, Silverstone. Okay, yeah.
P6.
And, yeah, no, it was a great performance from Steve, and it was just solid pace throughout the race as well. It wasn't like it was based on a sort of safety car situation or anything like that. He was just a very quick driver. So I'm surprised to see him down there in 18th for the time being. Hopefully for him, he can sort out a next flying lap. Although, that being said, I mean, it's only 3/10 between himself and Felipe, who's in 9th. So the gaps really are infinitesimally small between most of these drivers.
We're talking about 9/10 of a second from Jarno Opmeer in first to Pablo Hoglar down in P19. I don't think Arox has put in a representative time as of yet. And going back to what you were saying about over-representation from Hungarians in F1, I'm just trying to count. How many Hungarians do we actually have on the field right now? Because whenever I think about it, it's Hungarians, Poles, and, well, here in ORL at the very least, Italians.
Yeah, we certainly got our fair share of those. There are 3 Hungarians in this field right now, unless I'm missing someone. But I'm pretty sure Steve, Patrick, and Ben Sabakoni are the three Hungarians.
Or is Zones Polish?
Zones is Polish. Zones Kruti are the Polish representatives, unless I'm very much mistaken. Is there anyone else? No, it's just the two of them.
Today.
Yes, no Tomek Paradzic today, so it is just the two of them being our Polish delegation. And we don't have quite so many Italians as usual either, actually, as Domenico Lovece and Dario Iamullo are not actually present here today.
Sadly, we're missing...
Patrick. I guess he's just not got enough time left. Yeah, everyone's still in the pits now. Will not be able to improve again. So that's Jana Watmir, Patrick Kruti not able to improve towards the end of this session because the time is ticking down. And Patrick also wasn't able to get out there for another lap, so has just retired in the pit lane. Let's see what Joni Tormala can do as he's starting his final flying lap.
This has to be a big lap from the Finn. He needs to find a 0.4 of a second, well, practically 0.5 of a second, if he wants to sneak a pole away from the Predator Jana Watmir himself. Felipe also on a lap. There's a couple of hundreds up at the end of Sector 1, but Joni Tormala will make his way through a turn 4 now. And what's the Sector 1 time looking like? A 500s up. And while 500s might not look like a nut, or might not look like a lot, it might be enough to see Joni Tormala jump up 2 positions ahead of Josh Idowu in P8.
Yeah, the critical thing for the first sector is if you've got a 27.2, you're doing well, and that is exactly what Felipe has through there. Well, not Felipe, sorry, Joni Tormala has through there. So the Finn can be pretty happy with the way the lap is going so far. We'll see whether he's going to be quite so happy when he comes towards the end of Sector 2 here. Bit wide, actually. A little bit too late on the brakes into Turn 11. That's going to cost him a little bit of time as the checkered flag now falls, so everyone can finish this last attempt. Joni Tormala is still improving not by very much, and he has a mistake, a moment of oversteer on the exit of Turn 13 as he Zones moves up into 8th place for the time being, just behind his teammate Daniele Haddad. Here comes Joni Tormala then through the final corner and up towards the line. He's just got to pin the throttle and wait, but I think, yeah, he's backed out of it entirely, not able to bring the improvement, but he is sitting there in P11.
Alvaro Caraton is 0.2 up at the end of Sector 2. This is a quick lapper from the Williams driver, and the Spaniard might just jump onto the front row of the grid. Is it enough? It is indeed, but what can Alessio Di Capua pull out? He's a 400th up at the end of Sector 1. Through Sector 2 we go into the long sweeping right-hander, and how is the lap looking? 800ths. This is just about enough to jump ahead of Alvaro Caraton.
Yeah, it's all about this final sector now, and his final sectors have been so-so thus far throughout this qualifying session for Alessio Di Capua. It's that first sector of the lap where he's really nailed it on this occasion. Up towards the line now for him. What's it going to be? And it's by 1/1000 of a second for Alessio Di Capua, but it's not over yet. Here comes Josh Idowu. He's a 1/4 of a second up on his lap time, and he steals it away. A 1:23.977 to nab pole at the death. It's only Felipe left, but I think he has already backed out of it. So Josh Idowu taking pole in Bahrain.
And once again, Jacob, for the second week running and for the second time only, Jana Watmir will not be starting on the front row of the grid. Again, it's Alessio Di Capua who's pipping Jana Watmir and Josh Idowu, just like it was last time out in Monza.
Out of nowhere, really. Josh had actually struggled after that initial lap time he set that had him sitting P3 after the first exchanges. He'd struggled to set another lap time. This was his only second flying lap set in this qualifying session. So I assume he either aborted laps or had them invalidated and therefore had to abort them. But either way, he was green in all 3 sectors. And it was that final sector where he really nailed it down into the 20.7 marker, 35.9 in Sector 2 as well. Both of those really, really stellar sector times. And a deserving pole sitter for the Welshman.
To our YouTube chat, are you not entertained? Because that was, well, very, very close. I think when Alessio Di Capua crossed the line, one of the timings said 993, the other one said 994. So I thought it was the identical time for a moment, but it wasn't. However, Liam Parnell and Joni Tormala, starting P11, P12, they have fresher choice of tyres, and here at Bahrain, a circuit that is notorious for having fairly high tyre wear, medium hards tends to be a better strategy than starting on the soft tyres.
Indeed, it does. And yeah, we'll see whether it's going to pay off for them or not. Joni did actually completely back out of that lap at the death. I'm not sure if there was going to be a slight improvement for him or not, but he got out of the throttle and was only about 2/10 down on his best time. So I think he might have been improving and actually aborted it to try and aim for that P11 slot. Either way, he's managed P12 and he can be relatively happy with that.
I think he will be happy with that, but we're going to be jumping into a quick commercial break, and when we're back, we'll be having the race live and uninterrupted to the very end. So stay tuned for more here at ORL. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, as we look to be jumping on in to the race. And all the drivers are now in the lobby, and we are pretty much ready to go. And Jacob, first things first, let's take a look at those tyres, because everyone outside of the top 10 is not starting on the Red Wall soft tyres.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, it is the hard tyres that are the tyres of choice for the majority of those starting outside of the top 10. Usually, you'd see places 11 through 15 generally opting for the mediums, and then maybe the guys right at the back opting for the hards. Today, it's actually the other way around. We got Tom 97, Steven Arox, and 17th, 19th, and 20th all on mediums. And then Joni Tormela, who's a little bit of an outlier there, up in 12th. He'll need to make sure he gets past Liam Parnell early doors, otherwise he's going to have his first stint on that yellow walled tyre compromised.
And I want to go back to our battle for P2 in the championship. Alvaro Carreton, Patrick Kruti currently tied for points, and I think they were about 6 or 8 points ahead of Danny Haddad. As things stand, Alvaro Carreton will secure that P2 spot in the championship and has been showing the pace so far. But Patrick Kruti, for once, has shown strong qualifying pace, and I'm kind of scared as to what his race pace will be if his qualifying pace is this good.
Yeah, it's true. He does tend to outperform himself in the race compared to in qualifying. And usually we expect to see him qualifying down 13th, 14th, running the contra strategy and getting up there into a solid point scoring position. Here today, he's starting in that solid point scoring position, but he can't run the contra strategy that he tends to like so much. So can he do the job when he's having to run the default strategy, running those soft tires from the start of the race? We'll have to wait and see. I'm a little bit apprehensive for him on that front, but if he has the raw pace, that should be more than enough. He's ahead of very quick drivers in the form of Patrick Sirpos, Daniele Haddad, Zones, Felipe, those guys all on the soft tires as well. So not much to complain about there, and yeah, probably quite a hopeful outlook for this race.
In all honesty, Ben Sabukoni, Patrick Kruti, and Patrick Sirpos with fantastic qualifying results. Keep an eye out for Joni Tormela as well. Starting on those medium tires, should be able to get a better launch than Liam Parnell on the hards, and maybe get himself on the back of Felipe and just stick with the Brazilian for the start of the race and for the first few laps. But with that said, it looks like it is a time to begin the race. Josh Idowu and Alessio Di Capua on the front row of the grid, and it is well, this season's champion and last season's champion, Jarno Otmir, on the second row. We are pretty much ready to go. 5 red lights for the final time in ORL Season 14. And we are away. It looks to be a decent start from Ben Sabukoni on the third row of the grid. But it is Josh Idowu who gets away clean and will lead the field into turn 1. Alvaro Carreton has a little think about the inside of Alessio Di Capua into turn 1, but it's unable to make it work in the background. That's Jarno Otmir, who will squeeze his way alongside Alvaro Carreton on the run down towards the turn 4. Side by side between the Mercedes and the Williams as they make their way. Jarno Otmir round the outside from 4th on the grid. Can he make his way up just like he did on the first lap of the race in Monza? They're still by side as they make their way into the S's, but Jarno Otmir pulls it off and will move up to P3.
Yeah, holding off Alvaro Carreton. In the end, it was a slightly poor start, actually, for the Dutchman in the Mercedes. Meanwhile, his teammate further back, trying to get past Ben Sabukoni. But Patrick Kruti has to settle back in 6th for the time being in that black Mercedes. Black and yellow Renault driving clear for the time being. Outside of that, not much change in the top 10 zones. Daniele Haddad have switched positions, the 2 racing points, and Yoni Tormola's having a go at Liam Parnell back here, and Felipe as well. Felipe will be keen to stay ahead of the medium-tired AlphaTauri, and indeed he manages to do so. But I mentioned that it was critical for Yoni Tormola's race that he gets ahead of Liam Parnell straight away, and indeed he's managed to do that.
Yeah, and what happened to Felipe is he got squeezed a little bit wide on the exit of turn 10 by Danny Haddad. That just meant that he couldn't quite get onto the powers early as he would have liked, and it allowed Yoni Tormola to pull up alongside him on the run towards the turn 11. But those soft tyres early in the race working well. But here comes Ben Sabo-Konyi on Alvaro Caraton. Alvaro will go defensive, but he leaves the door open in the end, and the Hungarian will look for the inside, but Alvaro is even later on the brakes and somehow holds on to P4.
Yeah, lovely defense there from Alvaro Caraton, but it might not be over quite yet. Actually, Ben Sabo-Konyi not using the overtake, not using the DRS, letting Alvaro stay ahead on the run up to turn 4. Maybe not wanting to battle through there and risk losing a second to the cars ahead, and therefore falling out of DRS range before the DRS even begins, as my timing tower currently sorting itself out. The drivers are all firmly in a row for the time being. Alvaro had a little bit of a twitch on the exit of turn 8 there, but I think it's all under control in the Williams.
Tell you what, visibly anyway, it does look like Josh Idowu and Alessio Di Capua are starting to pull a gap to Jana Watner. It's nowhere near a second yet, still bordering around about that half a second mark, but maybe if they can really get the hammer down on the remainder of this lap and the start of the next lap, they could dare to dream of breaking the DRS to the reigning F1 Esports and the reigning ORL champion.
Yeah, both Josh Idowu and Alessio Di Capua are very high in terms of their ERS percentages as well. The amount of battery charge they have remaining, and therefore the amount of overtake mode they have available to deploy, is still very high compared to the cars behind. They're about 20% ahead of the likes of Opmir and Caraton. Ben Sabo-Konyi has been using a lot to try and stick with this front pack. Same for Patrick Cruty just behind as well.
Remember, this is the battle for P2 in the championship. Alvaro Caraton, Danny Haddad and Patrick Cruty, and Alvaro Caraton is currently the man who will be securing that spot. I think Jake Benham was just able to find a way through on Liam Parnell. The pair of them on the white wall, the harder tyres. And Jake Benham able to make his way up to P12.
Yeah, after a poor qualifying for the Alfa Romeos, both of them making waves at the beginning of this race. Jake Benham up 3 places from where he started. Steve up 4 from the very back row of the grid. So both of them are on the move right now. Steve would definitely hope to be, considering he started on the medium tyres as well. But Jake Benham doesn't have that tyre advantage over anyone right now. Started on those hard tyres, and yet he's still making up positions up there into 12th. So good drive from him thus far.
Keeping an eye as well on Patrick Simpos, because he's closing in on to Patrick Cruty. Just 3 tenths between them, and here at Bahrain it's not uncommon, or I should say it's very common, to see the DRS trains forming 3 DRS zones and 1 long straight as well that leads into the final corner. That just allows the drivers to really close up to one another. But Yoni Tormola, one of 4 drivers who are starting on those medium tyres, but Jake Benham doing so well on these hards, he's going to be in a really good position come at the end of the race.
Daniele Haddad's very close behind his teammate right now. Zones might be in trouble here. Does have DRS and a slipstream from Patrick up ahead, and as a result will be able to fend off the charging Italian behind. But Daniele clearly wanting to try and get past his teammate sooner rather than later. Trouble is, with this DRS train, as you mentioned, it can be very, very tricky to overtake, especially when you don't have a tyre advantage on the guys around you. So for the moment, we're going to see most of the drivers pretty much remaining in place. And it'll be interesting to see whether there's going to be a break in the chain or not between Yoni Tormola and Felipe in 10th and 11th right now. Tormola has done a great job of holding within that DRS range of the front 10 runners thus far. And similarly, Jake Benham and Liam Parnell are sticking with Tormola well as well.
Stiv has just found a way through on Get Owned, and now Tom97 is on the back of the Haas driver. And Tom, just like Stiv, is on these medium tyres. He's got good traction coming out of turn 11. Can he look for the inside down into 12? He pulls to the inside, but he's not able to get alongside into the braking zone. That being said, we do see Get Owned running wide, and, well, that would be brave if Tom was able to go all the way around the outside, but he'll switch to the inside for the right-hander. pulls alongside, but again, just doesn't quite have the traction to get ahead on a corner exit. Now has to tuck in behind the Haas and stay. And
yeah, it was a nice attempt there from Tom into turn 13, but it was never quite going to work. The nature of that corner, you'll always have better traction if you're on the outside. Further up, there's some battling going on. That is Steve trying to get past yet another driver and managing to do so as he dispatches Liam Parnell into turn 1. Now Tom doing the exact same thing to Ghetto just behind. So 2 medium tyre runners getting past 2 hard tyre runners. That being said, Liam Parnell has something to say about Steve getting past, but cannot pull back alongside the Alfa Romeo. Liam really struggling at the moment, down at 20% ERS. So has been battling a lot, trying to keep drivers behind, and not really any success in doing so.
yeah, and Steve is using these medium tyres to great effect. Next up is his teammate of Jake Benham. And Steve has so far shown that he doesn't really care if the drivers ahead have a DRS. He'll use the greater grip of his medium tyres to full effect. Up though towards the top, there haven't been any changes in the top 10 at all lately, and for now Joni Tormala just going to hold on to that P11. Probably wants to be waiting for something around the lap 8, lap 9 mark for that crossover point, which is when the mediums should start, or at least become visibly quicker than the soft tyres.
Indeed, yeah. It's going to be a little while before we get to that point, but the tyres do tend to degrade pretty quickly once they start to go off here in Bahrain. Yoshidowu has built a little bit of a gap. I say a very little bit of a gap because right now it's being eviscerated by the DRS zone, but nevertheless he's holding Alessio Di Capua at arm's reach throughout. The Italian isn't looking likely to get past Yoshidowu at the moment. So that's good news for the McLaren driver, who can just try and sprint clear in the second sector of the lap where there's fewer straights, fewer DRS zones. But nevertheless, both of them starting to drop Jarno Opmeer as well. But we've seen that many times throughout this season. Jarno Opmeer seemed like he's losing a bit of pace to the drivers ahead, but he always has that sort of level of comfort. He always seems to have it in the bag, and he just more often than not brings out the win anyway.
Tom 97 just got past Liam Parnell. He's over second behind Stib, so he needs to close into within a second as quickly as he can. Otherwise, he will be finding Liam Parnell very eager to climb back up to P14.
Indeed, and that is the first break in our huge 20-car long DRS train right now. Tom 97, 1.5 seconds behind Steve up ahead. The 2 Alfa Romeos running nose to tail up there in 12th and 13th, with Tom down in 14th. And he's not actually getting any closer now that he's got past Liam Parnell either, so he'll want to get back up into that DRS range, otherwise he could start to fall away quite rapidly.
So lap 6 of 29 about to begin, or sorry, I should say lap 7 of 29 about to start. Doesn't look like anyone in the top 10 on the precipice of making a move and climbing up the order. Just a case of maintaining ERS as best as you can, and all of the top 3, Yoshidowu, Alessio Di Capua and Jarno Opmeer, all on pretty much a 90% plus ERS.
Yeah, indeed. And then you get to Ben Sabokonyi, and he's down at 40%. So the Hungarian is sticking with these guys for now, but he's clearly having to work harder to be able to do so, deploying more of that overtake usage to make sure he has the power down the end of the straights so that he can make sure that the gap between himself and Alvaro Carreton doesn't balloon out of control. Currently just still there around half a second. That's exactly where Benz wants it. But he's having to use more of his resources to keep Alvaro that close to him.
Honestly, you've just given me an idea, Jacob. We could have handicap races, and it would be awesome if Codemasters could implement a way of, you know how when you have GT racing, you've got, you can give like a weight penalty onto cars. It'd be cool if you could give an ERS penalty onto drivers, because the field is so close that if you just remove, 10% or just change the recuperation by, 2% per braking zone, it would be enough to make the entire field pretty much dead on even.
Potentially, yeah. And you know what? I've given me another idea as well, and that would be to have a graphic on the timing tower on the left-hand side that shows everyone's ERS percentage. Wouldn't that be nice? Like they have in Formula E when they show the remaining battery charge for all those. That would be very, very useful, actually. But for now, we'll just have to deal with switching between cars as we have our first 3 pitters of the race in the form of Patrick Zones, and who is the last one? Cruti as well. Patrick Cruti also heading into the pit lane And all of those guys are going to strap on a set of hard tires, and they're going to leave the pits in the order they came in.
Now, Patrick Cruti going for the undercut, he's also in a Mercedes, just like the Mercedes from the actual Formula 1 race earlier today, going for the undercut. So, is this the masterclass coming through then for Patrick Cruti? Usually he does well when it comes to race strategies, and we'll see whether this can bump him up the order. Some harder tires going on to the Mercedes, and this should see him making it all the way to the end of the race.
Yeah, it should well do. Probably not going to be a two-stop like we saw today. As Daniel Haddad now is the driver with the gap, who can't quite hold hands with the car ahead. 1.2 seconds between himself and Ben Saboconi right now. Ben's is actually putting Alvaro under a little bit more pressure than he has done on the last few laps. It's 0.2, 0.1 seconds almost between these two right now. So Bent is really pushing it hard. Look in the braking zone, how much he concertinas up to the rear end of Alvaro Caraton. But to be fair to Alvaro, it's only 4 tenths up between himself and Jarno Opmeer, so he can't go much faster before he hits the rear end of the Mercedes. So Bentz, I think, is probably going to be pitting this lap and is looking to extract absolutely everything out of these tyres before heading into the pits. And indeed, it is the case. He wanted to minimize the gap as best he could before diving into the pit lane.
No case of speeding into the pit lane. Dani Haddad and Felipe Sousa will follow the Hungarian in. Hopefully for the Hungarian's sake, they won't hold him in the pits, and they won't.
Alvaro Caraton, sorry, he tried to go at Jarno Opmeer into turn one. I'm not sure if it's intentional. I only caught the second half of it, but they made contact, and Alvaro almost lost the car entirely. See many incidents of that kind in the F2 races this weekend. And Alvaro will be lucky to have all of his front wings still intact, but it looks like it is the case. And he'll just have some slightly angry rear tyres, but other than that, no harm done.
Ben Saboconi, he's come out of the pits behind Patrick Seposa and Patrick Cruti. So the undercut, just as big on the game as it was in real life earlier on today. So the question is, when the likes of Alvaro Caraton and Jan Watmir pit, will they come out behind the likes of the two Patricks?
Yeah, they might well do, actually, at this point. The two Patricks might be on for some podium slots, at least initially, once these guys come into the pit lane. Someone I want to keep my eyes on still is Joni Tormala, though, because even with all those drivers between himself and the top four pitting, he's only 1.2 seconds behind Alvaro Caraton. Admittedly, he's taking Jake Benham, Steve, and to a lesser extent, Tom 97 with him. But nevertheless, those guys are driving a great race right now, and it does seem like this race might fall into their favor come the latter stages. Josh Idowu is pitting from the lead of this race. Alessio Di Capua follows him in, but Jarno Opmeer continues for another lap.
So does the likes of Joni Tormala as well, but then again, Joni Tormala is on the medium tyre. So Jarno Opmeer going a little bit for the Max Verstappen strategy. And I'm going to keep an eye on Alvaro Caraton, Josh Idowu, and Alessio to see where they feed out relative to Patrick Cruti, who's right now making his way on the start-finish straight, and I think he's going to jump every single one of them. Patrick Cruti takes the effective race lead, and it will be Josh Idowu feeding in behind Ben Saboconi.
Josh Idowu has gone from first to fourth, effectively speaking, as a result of that pit stop. Pitting a lap later, 2 laps later than some of the other drivers, has really cost the Welshman here, who was looking just absolutely fine out at the front for the whole first stint of this race. But now he finds himself almost a second behind Ben Saboconi. He'll need to close in that gap, make sure that while these tyres are heating up, he doesn't fall out of that DRS range, because he cannot afford to let Patrick Cruti, Patrick Sepos, and Ben Saboconi get away from him. Thankfully for him, it looks like that gap is stabilizing at around 9/10 of a second, so he should be able to get back in DRS range in time.
And Alvaro Caraton, who was running in P4, is now in last. Okay, it's not effective at P20, but it is at P20 at the moment. And this means I think Jarno Opmeer is going to feed out behind the Williams, unless Jarno Opmeer can get even more OP, can get even more Predator-like than he has before. Joni Tormala picks up a 3-second time penalty. That will cost him hugely at a circuit where time penalties are not too common.
Yeah, definitely not the norm around here to be picking up time penalties, so Joni Tormala with a bit of an oopsie there. And as you mentioned, it's not going to suit him when it gets to the end of this race, and he finds himself losing several positions as a result of that 3-second time penalty. Josh Idowu still really struggling to keep up with Cruti, Patrick, and Ben Saboconi right now. Let's see where Jarno Opmeer is going to feed back out. I think you're right. I think it's going to be 20th and last. Although not quite, actually. He's actually between the two racing points, so he's had a negative lap there.
Felipe just lost the rear on the exit of T1, so Felipe will drop down to B20. But you know what, man? That was a stellar in-lap. Somehow, he's managed to outpace Alvaro Carreton on the fresh, hard tires and has fed out down into P17. So not bad at all from the Mercedes driver.
Yeah, indeed. He can be pretty happy with that, but I bet Zones didn't go into this race thinking at some point he'd be leading Jarno Opmeer in 16th and 17th, albeit, but nevertheless, I don't think he thought he was going to be ahead of the Dutchman at any point, really. But right now, he is ahead, and they're on the same strategy. 2 laps of difference in the tyres, but that's not going to be a huge difference in terms of tyre wear, at least not at this stage of the race. So Zones, it's a lot of pressure on his shoulders right now, the young Pole, to keep Jarno Opmeer behind him, and also to keep pace with Josh Idowu, Alessio Di Capua just up ahead.
Zones has a lot of experience racing in the Polish National League with the likes of Tomek Politician. I think the 2 of them battled it out for the championship in the previous season. I may be mistaken, but I'm sure Zones will be somewhat accustomed to having very quick drivers behind him. Maybe not quite at Jarno Opmeer standard. Critically though for Zones, he does have Alessio Di Capua in front of him and will be able to pick up the DRS, but Jarno Opmeer does not care. He's going to move to the inside regardless of the Polish driver. And Zones will do his best to defend, hanging around the outside, but Jarno Opmeer on the curb will pick up the position and move up to P15.
That is beautifully judged from Jarno Opmeer. Not only the initial braking zone, but the throttle application on the exit of turn 2, all over the curb he was, and it's so easy to light up the rear tyres there. But he got the exact right amount of throttle down and managed to out-drag Zones on the exit of that corner, which is so hard to do when you're on that curb. So credit where credit's due. Jarno Opmeer with a fantastic maneuver to try and disrupt this DRS train just a little bit, and he does need to make progress, because right now he is sitting 6th in this train of drivers, looking at potentially a 6th place finish at best, unless he can get past these guys.
Jarno Opmeer is in the same kind of position as he was before the pit stop, in the sense that he's behind Josh Idowu and Alessio Di Capua. Yes, you've got Ben Sabuconi and the 2 Patricks up ahead, but remember, Josh, Alessio, Jarno, they all have fresh, hard tyres, but we'll see whether those fresh, hard tyres make a difference in a track where tyre wear is pretty big. We'll have to see whether the Patricks and Ben Sabuconi have opted to pit maybe that 1 lap too early, and whether they're going to be struggling with their tyres in the final couple of laps.
Tom 97 into the pits for the Red Bull team. He'll be filtering out down at the very bottom around the same sort of place as Arox, who also started on that medium set of tyres that Tom's just got off of his car onto a set of hards instead. And these guys, they're not too far away from this battling pack, and they were towards the back of the Contra strategists as well. So the likes of Joni Torma, Jake Benham and Steve, they're looking like they're going to be at least getting out ahead of Felipe. And that could be critical for them. They might well find themselves slotting directly into that DRS train between Patrick Cruti and Alvaro Carreton.
I think both the medium and the hard tyre runners, they're going to try to make it to around about lap 20 as Zones picks up a time penalty, running wide on the exit of the S's. But going back to what I was saying, I think both the medium and hard tyres, they'll make it to around lap 20 to pit. I think the hard tyres runners will try to pit at around lap 21 for the softs, and the medium tyre runners will have to pit around lap 19, lap 20, just because I don't think the mediums can get too much further. So once we do get towards the end of this stint, expect to see the likes of Jake Benham and Liam Parnell on those hard tyres really clawing in to Joni Tormala and Steve.
Ben Sabuconi very close behind Patrick Sepos for the time being, as Joni Tormala does indeed head into the pit. So he's going the same direction as Tom 97 and Arox in terms of the strategy. Steve stays out for another lap, so he is going to commit to running those medium tyres at least a little bit longer here. And it's going to be the hards, of course, for Joni Tormala here. Zones also with a time penalty now. Him and Joni are the only 2 drivers in the field who have picked up that time penalty, and that will not suit them terribly well at all.
Now let's see where Joni Tormala feeds out. He's behind Alvaro Carreton. Is it ahead of Felipe? It's going to be nip and tuck, but the Finn will come out just ahead of the young Brazilian driver. Joni Tormala now finds himself 2.5 seconds behind Alvaro Carreton, but he has the freshest hard tyres of everyone right now. And this also does mean when the likes of Jake Benham and Steve also pit, they're going to be feeding out just behind Felipe, especially now that Felipe will be able to use the DRS from Joni Tormala to drag him forward as Tom 97 picks up his first time penalty of the race.
One driver who's having a bit of a rough time of it right now is Daniele Haddad, stuck behind his teammate and at 14% ERS percentage in the battery charge right now. So that's not where the Italian would like to be in that regard. He doesn't have a lot of available power to call on if the likes of Alvaro Caraton and Yoni Tormo start getting interested in trying to get past his racing points. So he needs to be careful, try and conserve some of that energy back up. And also, it's interesting, when you look at the two Patricks and Ben Sabokonyi, they're ahead right now of Josh Ido, Alessio Di Caprio, Jarno Otmir. The drivers we would say are probably the fastest three drivers here today. But the big difference is once again in that ERS battery charge. Patrick, both Patricks in fact, and Ben Sabokonyi, they're around 40% right now. Whereas Josh Ido, Alessio Di Caprio, and Jarno Otmir are between 80 and 90%. So they are all in a much more solid position when it comes to that battery charge.
And here comes Alvaro Caraton. He's closer than he's been all race to Danny Haddad. This is also a move for the battle for second in the Drivers' Championship. And Alvaro Caraton slides it down the inside of Danny Haddad, but Danny Haddad might be able to get the switchback. Should get the better traction, and he is right on the gearbox now of Alvaro Caraton, but he just has no ERS to battle the Spanish driver. Alvaro Caraton late on the brakes, almost runs into the back of zones. Remember, we saw Danny Haddad doing something similar back at the Bahrain short circuit. And I actually think that was into Alvaro Caraton himself, but Alvaro will keep his front wing undamaged for now.
And you can see that's exactly the problem I was talking about for Daniele Haddad. He just does not have the available battery charge to shove down the overtake button towards the end of the straight and to keep Alvaro Caraton behind. And as a result, the Spaniard moves up into what is currently 15th place, but is actually a pretty decent point scoring slot once we get down to the nitty-gritty of this race. Yoni Tormola getting closer behind these drivers as well on much fresher hard tyres. So he's going to be looking to try and get past them. He himself doesn't exactly have a wealth of electrical power available to him, though. Currently sitting down at 30%.
I think for Yoni Tormola, he should be able to get past Danny Haddad without too much of an issue, as Andy Ghetto, Liam Parnell, they're all diving into the pit, so they're going to be putting on a set of medium tyres. They don't want to be stretching out those hards to a point where they can put the softs on, because the mediums do perform better than the softer tyres. Jake Benham, Steve, Pablo Hoglar will stay out for 1 to 2 laps longer. So don't forget, there are 2 Alfa Romeo, so they can't really double stack in the pits.
Yeah, and Jake Benham actually is still out there on those hard tyres, and he's only getting faster right now. He's running the same pace as the likes of Patrick Cruti. They're all in the 29.5s, 29.4s maybe, but he's running the same pace as those guys, which means he's not under any great onus to pit. Theoretically, he can wait for the point where he can go onto soft tyres at the end of this race, because he's not losing any time to the guys, despite the delta in age between his hard tyres and those of the cars a few positions behind.
Precisely so, Jacob. That's the thing with these hard tyres. Yes, when you come out of the pits, you can bang in a couple of quick laps. That goes for whatever tyre compound you put on the car. But with the harder tyres, after a few laps, they lose their bite. And then, to be honest, you only get faster and faster as the fuel load drops down until the point where your hard tyres reach 70% tyre wear. So the decision right now for the likes of Jake Benham and for Pablo Hoglar is they need to decide, do they want to be putting on the medium tyres and have a tyre advantage for about 14 laps, or do they want to wait 4 laps and put on the soft tyres to have a huge tyre advantage for about 9 laps? And the answer is that they want that tyre advantage right now.
Yeah, Pablo Hoglar was definitely falling away as well with his lap times. He was getting down into the 30s. Same for Steve, by the way, who is the last driver to pit in this race. And he actually started on mediums, not hards. So the Hungarian is just going for a bit of a glory run out here at the front right now. And maybe waiting, he must be waiting to try and get soft tyres onto that car. If he was going for hards, he'd have gone for them by now. He is down in the 130s as well, so he's starting to lose time with those mediums, really getting very second-hand at this stage.
Jake Benham critically comes out right ahead of Felipe. He's behind Tom 97, and Felipe will not be able to have a run at Jake Benham into turn 4. So Jake Benham on the medium tyres, he's on the back of Tom 97, who critically does not have an ERS from Yoni Tormola up ahead. Expect Jake Benham to really fly up the order in the next or in the remaining laps of the race.
Yeah, Tom 97 and Arox have both picked up 3-second time penalties now as well. And it's rare to see Tom picking up time penalties when other drivers aren't. Usually he's one of the cleanest in terms of picking up those corner cutting warnings. So shame for him on this occasion, because at the moment he's looking at potentially a decent point scoring finish before penalties are factored in, but he's going to struggle to maintain those points once those penalties are taken into account, because the whole field is just so close right now. And when everyone is so close on pace as they are in this race, the time penalties mean so much more.
Exactly. And we only have 4 drivers with time penalties. So Steve is pitting. I think he can put on the soft tires from this point. If he puts on the hards, I think he's just wasted a few laps where he could have got off of those worn medium tires. And there it is, soft tires going on. So Steve waiting until the last possible moment. Let's see where he feeds out. He should come out just behind Liam Parnell, maybe behind Get-Owned as well.
Yeah, he had to pit now because those mediums were really falling away. He was into the 131s on the lap before he came into the pits. So he's got to make these soft tires last a little bit longer than he'd probably like, but with a lower fuel load, it is definitely possible. It's definitely doable. And he needs to make sure he uses the grip wisely while he still has it.
Jake Benham's got past Tom 97 pretty quickly. Liam Parnell will be looking for a way through on the Red Bull driver too. Tom 97 still within that 1 second of Jake Benham, but I don't think the DRS will provide too much of an issue for the Williams driver in attempting an overtake.
Yeah, Joni Tormola coming up behind those 2 racing points and wanting to emulate Alvaro Carreton, who's been able to dispatch zones, as well as Daniele Haddad, who he dispatched a few laps ago. Meanwhile, Alessio Di Caprio has started to deploy more of his ERS. Meanwhile, Patrick Sipos in second has started to save a little bit more. So, Patrick Cruti is maybe going to be vulnerable to the other Patrick Sipos, once we get down to the last few laps of this race. But the likes of Josh Idowu, Jarno Otmir, they're still sharks in the water right now. They can still push the button and try and make things work in the next few laps. And Cruti already trying to break the toe from Patrick Sipos behind.
I want to check ERS on everyone as Jake Benham sets the new fastest lap of the race. Not surprising. So Jarno Otmir on around 80-85% ERS. For Alessio Di Caprio, he's on around about 60. Josh Idowu has himself at about 85. Ben Sabukonyi on about 30. For Patrick Sipos, he's on about 45%. And for Patrick Cruti, down to about 20. So Patrick Sipos looking in a very strong position right now.
Yeah, he is probably the favorite to win this race, at all honesty, at this stage, because there's just so many cars that the likes of Josh
Jake Benham down the inside of Joni Tormola, down into the right-hander. That was aggressive from Jake Benham, but he knows that he needs to get the moves done as quickly as he can on his medium tyres. Excellent stuff from the British driver.
And he's got plenty of laps still, actually, to continue making moves, and Joni Tormola was going to be harder to pass than these 2 racing points up ahead because they have older tyres than Joni Tormola does. So Jake Benham looking really good right now. Honestly, if he keeps up that sort of move and if those medium tyres stay with him, which they're only 1 lap old, so they'll stay with him for a while, he has time to maybe even snag a podium again in this race.
Yeah, and the right hairpin on the end of the S's is one of the best places to go for a move. You don't need DRS. You can really close in from your tyre wear advantage through the S's and then throw it down the inside, because the racing line is to take usually a pretty wide line, and Danny Haddad is next on the list for Jake Benham. Danny Haddad has DRS. He won't use up any of his ERS to defend. I think he knows it's pretty much a lost cause, and Jake Benham will go down the inside in 2 positions in under a lap for the Alpha driver.
Jarno Otmir has done Alessio Di Caprio as well. I said he could push the button whenever he wanted to and start deploying that energy, and he's done exactly that, down to 50%, but he's made that 1 position. Now he'll conserve again. Next up is Josh Idowu. He's going to be a harder target because he himself has a lot of battery charge still remaining in that orange McLaren, whereas Alessio Di Caprio was starting to struggle with conserving his. So Jarno Otmir's next challenge, Josh Idowu, is going to be a much stiffer competition. But if he can get past him, he can potentially look to make easy work of Ben Sabukonyi, Patrick, and Patrick Cruti out at the front, because they are using their ERS a lot more.
And something that I'm starting to wonder is, yes, Jarno Otmir and Josh Idowu, they have fresher tyres than the 3 in front, but honestly, I don't think Josh Idowu or Jarno Otmir win this. I think it's going to be one of the Patricks at the moment as, oh, that's aggressive from Jake Benham down the inside in the final corner of Sector 2. How did he pull that off? These are some unorthodox moves from the Englishman, and they are splendid.
I mean, what if it's Jake Benham that's going to win this race? He's got plenty of laps still to do this, and he is making up these places at a rate of knots. That is 3 places on the last lap. Meanwhile, out at the very front, Patrick Cruti has been passed already by Patrick.
That's a dive from Josh Idowu.
Over him, it's Yano Otmir, it's Josh Idowu up the inside. They make contact as the Renault will just about hold on to the position. Bentham Okonye is still going to be under pressure though. Josh Idowu deploying all of that overtake that he's been so carefully saving throughout this race. Around the outside he tries to go, but he cannot make that move stick either. And Bentham Okonye defends, holds him off. Beautifully done by the Hungarian Josh Idowu. His best laid plans have been foiled. He might be vulnerable to Yano Otmir in the coming laps.
And Josh Idowu used a lot of ERS to try to pull off that move. He then realized he's in the McLaren. He'll try to role play Lando Norris round the outside into turn 4. But Bentham Okonye had enough of grip on the inside, had enough grip on his hard tires and held onto the position. And Yano Otmir is sitting behind and he is licking his lips. He knows that Joshua has used up a whole bunch of his ERS in the process. But I'm keeping an eye on Jake Benham because he is right on the rear end of Alvaro Carreton in the battle for P7, lap at 21 of 29.
Patrick Sipos has managed to build a pretty significant gap to Patrick Cruti. It's 0.8 of a second. If he could just get that extra 0.2, he'd be a nail on to win this race. If he could break that DRS, he's not going to be able to do it though. Jake Benham close behind Alvaro Carreton. He spent a whole lap behind the Williams, so his progress is being allayed somewhat here. But I'd expect to see him getting past the Williams down into turn 1 now. It's a decent run out of the final corner for Alvaro. And they are both using their overtake, trying to defend is the Spaniard. And actually, he might find himself into the side of Alessio, and he does! And Jake Benham's into the back of him. He almost spins out entirely. Somehow, Alessio Di Caprio hasn't lost out too hard from that, and Alvaro Carreton's still trying to battle with him. But Alessio holds on to 6th, and he was just the innocent party in a battle between Carreton and Benham that went way too far.
And it's all over for Jake Benham. He's lost part of his front wing. His end plate went flying in the contact. That is a disaster. And what could have very well been a podium for the Englishman is all gone. He had to play it aggressively. He had to try to find the moves as quickly as he can. But it has all come back to bite him on the 22nd lap of the race. Now with a damaged front wing, shortly his damage limitation, and he just wants to stick within this DRS train.
Indeed, he will. Alessio will be very glad that he still has DRS on the car ahead. Jake Benham still looking lively right now, despite his front wing damage. Still wanting to get past Alvaro Carreton. That is the difference between those medium tyres and the much older hards on that Williams up ahead. But still, it's going to be so much more difficult for Jake to make those moves now.
Here he comes. He's on the back. He's got the slipstream. He's going to look for the move into the final corner. And Jacob Benham again in an unorthodox overtaking position, proving that you do not need a DRS to make a move work. He will be able to work his way past the Spaniard. He's got DRS, and now he has to defend from Alvaro Carreton on the run down into turn 1. We see Alvaro be late.
Yano Otmir just made contact with Josh Idowu. He just went into the side of the McLaren pretty hard. I think his front wing is intact, but Josh Idowu himself was taking a look at Bentham Okonye. They got very, very close into turn 1. Indeed, it's really heating up at the very front now. But Patrick Sipos is still clear of Patrick Cruti for now. However, Cruti is now the one who's being able to save a little bit more ERS, just a tiny bit more, than the Red Bull up ahead. And once again, Patrick Sipos, he's made a lot of mistakes this race, but he's so fast that it hardly matters. You see him getting deep into corners. You think there's no way he's the fastest car out there, but he seems to be making it work regardless.
And what can Patrick Cruti pull out in the latter stages of this race? And Jacob, I have a feeling that this is going to go well and truly down to the final lap of the race. Things are heating up. The two Patricks are pitting early on for the undercut. They have a track position, but they have the likes of Bentham Okonye, Josh Idowu, and Yano Otmir all behind them with significantly fresher tyres, especially in the case of Yano Otmir. 3-lap fresher, harder tyres. And how much of tyre wear does the Red Bull and the Mercedes of Patrick Sipos and Patrick Cruti have?
It's always Yano Otmir that has the more ERS. It's always him that seems to be in the best position. But the trouble is, he's down in 5th. He's got too many drivers that he needs to pass if he wants to win this race right now. Patrick Kruti going for the move on Patrick Sipos, and it is the Polish Patrick who takes the inside line and takes first position back away from the Hungarian. Now, Ben Sabukonyi finds his compatriot all over his front nose, and he wants to try and get past him as well. But Patrick Sipos isn't done with Patrick Kruti either. Back around the outside of turn 4 he goes. That's audacious.
Oh,
and
look
he
at
can't
Jan
quite
Watmir.
make it stick. He picks up a penalty in doing so. Meanwhile, Jan Watmir behind manages to dispatch Josh Idowu using that battery charge to his advantage. But Josh might not be done yet either. Going back around the outside, Jano goes defensive alongside Ben Sabukonyi, and just about they all leave intact. But Patrick Kruti's back into the lead. Patrick Sipos has a penalty, and Jan Watmir is up in a 4th.
And Jake Benham almost went round the outside of Alessio Di Capua through a turn 8. He almost pulled that off. Honestly, if he had all of his front wing, I think he would have done it, but he just couldn't find the traction on the curb. Either way, Jan Watmir using the battle to his advantage to find a way through on Josh Idowu, but great battling between the front 3. We're on lap 24 of 29. We're about to start lap 25. Just over 5 laps remain here at Bahrain for the final round of ORL Season 14.
Yeah, Patrick Sipos might think that maybe he can get that 3-second time penalty removed after the race. He picked it up in the midst of his battle with Patrick Kruti, and he might say that he had nowhere else to go. Right now, though, Kruti's trying to build that gap back to the Red Bull behind, but he's not really managing to do so at all.
On the inside of Josh Idowu, nice and late on the brakes. Have to be careful not to run into the back of Jan Watmir. I think there was a slight bit of contact. And look at JTB. He's trying to find a way through. He's going to get the switcheroo on the exit over 3. Alessio Di Capua shuts the door. And there is no battery for Jake Benham. He'll look for the outside with the medium tyres, but he's missing a piece of his front wing. He doesn't have the grip, and Jakey Benham has to drop back down and concede the position.
Ben Sabukonyi's trying to get past Patrick through the S's as well, but he cannot do so, and now he's under pressure from Jan Watmir trying to go around the outside of turn 8. He's going to be shown the door by Ben Sabukonyi. He has to accelerate on the curbing, and he manages to get the power down regardless. He uses a touch of overtake and sends it up the inside of turn 10. Ben Sabukonyi will have to give that position up. He tries for the switch back on the exit of the corner, but no way in hell he's going to manage that. Jan Watmir has too much of that battery charge available to him, and as a result, he moves his way up in a 3rd. Now it is the 2 Patricks standing between him and his 9th victory of the season, I believe, for Jan Watmir, if he can dispatch these 2.
How does Jan Watmir do it? Every single time. The man is just too darn quick. He's up to P3, and well, 2 Patricks in his way. Well, I don't know about you, Jacob, but what do you think has higher odds? 1 Jano or 2 Patricks?
I think Jano has the higher odds at this stage. He's got the best ERS, particularly over and above Patrick Sipos. And particularly if Patrick Sipos wants to keep trying to battle Patrick Kruti as well. These guys have started their battling earlier in the race than you usually expect.
No way, he's so late on the brakes, and now Alvaro Caraton has joined into the battle as well. That was late on the brakes from Alessio, and Jakey B went even later on the brakes. They're searching for the outside in turn 1. They went so far off the track, it was ridiculous. But thankfully, there is no damage that comes through. Joni Tormala has made his way up to P10, and all of a sudden, the time penalties are flying in as thick and as fast as Jan Watmir closes right in onto Patrick Sipos, who in turn closes in onto Patrick Kruti.
And let's not forget, Jake Benham is doing all this with front wing damage, with the whole end plate missing off of his front wing. Now, admittedly, it's on the right-hand side, and that means that there's only about, 2 corners around the circuit where that's really going to matter for him. But it is still going to matter in those corners. One of those is this one coming up here, turn 11, where he's going to struggle with understeer relative to the other drivers. You can see them getting away from him just a little bit there. But nevertheless, he's doing a fantastic job, even with that front wing damage, to stick with these guys, currently sitting down in 7th, and if he didn't pick that up, you've got to imagine he'd be up there battling for a podium right now.
You'd have to think so, to be honest. I honestly think, and I will stand by this, if Jake Benham did not have wing damage, he would be my favourite to take the win in this race. Patrick Kruti, look how defensive he's going. But Patrick Sipos under pressure from Jan Watmir. Lap 27 of 29, 3 laps remaining. And Jan Watmir might go for 2 for 1 on 1 straight, but Jan Watmir will settle for P2, and it is now a Mercedes 1-2. Patrick Kruti leading Jan Watmir here at Bahrain.
Jake Benham with a very stout defense against Alvaro Caraton over 7th position as well. The Spaniard wants to get past. He has a 3-second time penalty, so he needs to make hay right now.
He's run wide, and Ben Sabaconi has been able to slaughter through up into P3 through turn 4. And Josh Udoh is going to be the next man searching for a way through on Patrick Zippos, who, don't forget, has 3 seconds worth of time penalties. He's going to drop behind not just Josh Udoh, but Alessio Di Capua and Jake Benham as well.
Yeah, and that was the mistake once again from Patrick there. It's the sort of mistake he's been making all race, but this time Ben Sabaconi is able to capitalize. And as a result, Patrick falling down into 4th. He might still get that penalty removed, but nevertheless, it's not a podium right now for the Hungarian, who has nothing left in the tank in terms of his ERS either. So that's why he couldn't battle back against the likes of Jarno Opmeer. Jarno still has about 50% right now. That's twice as much as Patrick Kruti has. And if he deploys some now, deploys some next lap, and then on the last lap, Patrick Kruti will have absolutely nothing left with which to defend from the Dutchman.
And Patrick Kruti, what is more important for him? Is it to take the race win? Is it to defend with everything he's got from Jarno Opmeer? I'm sure he's also thinking about P2 in the Drivers' Championship, but Jarno Opmeer does not care. He might have already won the Drivers' Championship as Jarno Opmeer. He might have won the F1 Esports, but he wants more and more and more. Down the inside he goes, and Jarno Opmeer will claim the race lead here at Bahrain.
Kruti's let him through there. He wants to farm ERS off him. He wants to take him on to
Jake Benham's
the
looking
final
for the
lap.
inside. It's 3 abreast as they make their way down towards the turn 4. Jake Benham down the inside of Alessio Di Capua. Finally, he gets the move to work, and Alvaro Caraton will find a way through as well. They're side by side into the S's, and Alvaro Caraton makes the move. Jake Benham moves up to P6, and Alvaro Caraton up to P7. And Alvaro almost runs into the back of Jake Benham, and this is going to allow Alessio Di Capua to come down the inside. The pair of them make contact, and now Yuri Tormala will go down the inside. 3 abreast down into the triple left-hander. Alessio with a switchback. Are you kidding me, Jacob?
Oh, it's all gone wrong. That's Yoni Tormala off the road. There's front wing damage. It's flying everywhere. Zones is trying to take advantage. Andinate is trying to take advantage. We've hardly mentioned him this race, but he's up into a point-scoring position for the time being. Does have a time penalty, though. Daniela Haddad and Liam Parnell, they're going to benefit from a lot of these. Arox is retired from the race at the very back, but never mind that right now. Let's look back towards the very front, where Jarno Opmeer is gapping Patrick Kruti. Look at the gap between these two. Kruti has nothing left in his overtake. He was down at 8% towards the end of that straight. He cannot live with Jarno Opmeer. He can't make the move onto this final lap. I think Jarno Opmeer has this in the bag.
And Alvaro Caraton has significant wing damage. He's going to have to come into the pits, but here comes Jake Benham on the back of Patrick Zippos. Up ahead, we're seeing Josh Udoh going for the inside on Ben Sabaconi. Ben Sabaconi, the Hungarian, will desperately try to hold it around the outside. Side by side, they make their way through turn 2, but Josh Udoh picks up the move and moves up into P3. Jake Benham has found a way past on Patrick as well, but Patrick not going to let this one out as he looks for the outside down into turn 4. Side by side, Jacob, and JKB holds on to the position.
Holds on to the position. Patrick trying to do the up and under, but cannot make it work. And it's unfortunate for Patrick Zippos. This is a race where it looked like he could win, but he got too excited too early, used too much of the overtake mode, tried to battle with Patrick Kruti before he really should have done. And as a result, long way down the line now, he's fallen
Alessio's
down,
going down the inside into turn 10 on Patrick Kruti, or pardon me, on Patrick Zippos, and Alessio Di Capua will move up to P6. He's not giving up, and we still have battles right on the final lap of the race.
Indeed, yeah, Alessio's starting to really like that turn 10 all of a sudden. I will say that dive bomb up the inside of the two drivers a lap ago was potentially over-optimistic, but nevertheless.
And he's just gone all the way around the outside of the double right-hander on Patrick Zippos, who is really struggling on his hard tires. But I tell you what, Josh Udoh is all over the back of Patrick Kruti. He can't find the slingshot. He taps the rear end of Patrick Kruti, but Jarno Opmeer secures another win. Patrick Kruti takes P2. Josh Udoh swerves over the line to take P3 ahead of Ben Sabaconi, JKB in P5, ahead of Alessio Di Capua, Danny Haddad, Liam Parnell, Gerard, and Andy completes the top 10.
Patrick falls out of the top 10 at the very end there as well after a really excellent race for the most part. And he might still get that penalty removed, potentially. Finishes just ahead of Tom 97 in the end. The Red Bulls with 11th and 12th. Yoni Tormala finishing well at the back on those wet tyres after he had that incident with Alessio Di Capua and Alvaro Caraton. But Alessio, he's managed his first point-scoring position for quite a while, although I wouldn't say it was a clean race. It was a clean race for the majority. He was doing such a good job. And then at the end, it all got a bit hectic between all kinds of drivers. But once again, it is Jarno Opmeer that shows that he always is the master here in ORL.
Honestly, absolutely fantastic from Jarno. I'm seeing a certain Barry Boromand in the chat, and I think Barry Boromand might have been one of the few drivers who could have made what was already an exceptionally exciting race even more exciting. As Joni Tormala on the full wet tyres is going to dive on into the pits. He decided that maybe the wet's on the best here at Bahrain in the dry. And he'll complete his race in the pits. But Jacob, I asked the question at the start. Do you think ORL can surpass the excitement of the opening F1 race of the season? And I think that was a most resounding yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, at the very least, it was about neck and neck, right? Because that was a really great race earlier today, but this was a really great race here today as well. And when Jarno Opmeer was 6th in that train of cars, he was 7th even when they came out of the pits, I thought, surely someone else is going to win. Are we going to see a second win of the season for Patrick Cruti? Are we going to see a debut win in ORL for Patrick Sepos? But no, it's once again Jarno Opmeer. He even had to get past Alessio Di Capua and Josh Idowu, 2 drivers who've qualified ahead of him. And Josh Idowu in particular, someone that you would expect to have that consistency and the sort of canniness to be able to keep Jarno Opmeer behind in that scenario, but he couldn't do it. And it was Jarno once again taking the win. And yeah, I mean, it was just so thrilling to watch him battling through. And Jake Benham gave us a lot to watch as well.
All I'm going to say is if this race happened in real-life Formula 1, it would be talked about for not years, more than decades, as the greatest race of all time. But
it would be right up there for sure.
On that note, we're going to be jumping into a quick commercial break, and when we're back, we'll be having our driver interviews as well as our full post-race reaction. Stay tuned for more here at ORL. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, as we're jumping in for our post-race reactions after what was a thrilling round 12 of ORL Season 14. Jarno Opmeer, unsurprisingly, took the win. It was somewhat surprising when there were about 6-7 laps to go, and Jarno Opmeer was running in about, I think it was P6 at the time. Patrick Cruti took P2 to make it a 1-2 for Mercedes, with a Josh Idowu, your pole sitter, completing the podium spots.
Indeed, yep. And I mean, it could have been so many drivers that were taking the podium slots in that race as well. There was a lot going on there, and many drivers with an outside chance. It was interesting, actually, that Jake Benham as well, there were several other drivers on the same strategy. None of them made it work like he did. None of the other medium tire runners came, rocketing up through the field in the same way that we saw from the Alfa Romeo. And after a relatively subpar qualifying for him, he definitely turned it around in style.
Yeah, and I think just showing again why Jarno Opmeer is, well, the reigning champion, the F1 Esports champion as well. Shame for Alvaro Carreton, shame for JKB that he picked up the front wing damage. A lot of aggressive moves from JKB, and I'm sure a couple of them may be investigated by the stewards after the race. But for you, Jacob, who was your driver of the day?
My driver of the day, oh, that is a tough one. I mean, to be honest, if we're being literal, my driver of the day is Jarno Opmeer. He won the race, and he was not in a position to do so by any means.
Nope.
if we're talking about punching above Patrick Cruti, I mean, he's third in the championship, but it's not usually been through performances like that he's been able to do it. He did a great race today. Patrick Sipos, before he fell off at the end, was doing a great job as well. But yeah, I mean, I think looking at it, I would have to give it to Yano.
I think for me it might be Jacoby. I know you're not fond of that one, Jacob, but we do have our first interviewee here, Joni Tortmala.
Yeah.
Joni, first thing I just want to ask is that final lap, you were right in the middle of everything, and you're the one who kind of got collected and ended up facing the wrong way. Just talk us through the chaos that was the final couple of laps.
There was a lot of questionable moves going on, but still it was quite fun. Everyone was sending it, I think, because it's the last race and the final laps. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened there on the hairpin, but I indeed got collected.
And something else to ask as well. Obviously, you're not going to be happy with the final, your final finishing position, but I'm sure you must have also had a bit of a smile on your face as well with some of the battles that you were able to have on circuit.
Yeah. The last laps even I got collected were fun. Yeah, I think that was the most eventful part of the race, because the first 25 laps I was just running behind other cars and had nothing to do. But yeah, it was fun after all.
Okay, and final question for you, Joni, then. What were the wet tires like?
Very slippery. There was not much grip, and I also had a rich fuel mix and overtake button on, so it was very interesting to drive.
Okay, well, Joni, thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you for ORL Season 15.
Yeah, no worries. See you then, I guess. Bye-bye.
Bye. And I believe Jacob has our race winner, Jano Otmir.
Yeah, hello, Jano. Congratulations on your 7th win in a row and your 8th win in 9 races this season. How does it feel?
Pretty good, yeah. This race was quite tough, to be honest. I think quite clear that I probably went a little bit wrong with strategy. Tried to extend the softs. I thought hards were going to be a lot more tricky towards the end, but they were not. So, very good race in the end. I think I drove pretty well. Wanted to save one set of softs, or one new set of softs, in case of a late safety car. So that's why I didn't win out for the final run in quali. But other than that, I think a very solid race.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering actually. I was trying to turn it over my mind because there was a few of you guys that didn't actually go out for that last one, but that makes a lot of sense actually. But yeah, so thinking about it, so I just read it out. Obviously, 7 wins in a row now. Even when you were down there in 7th in that train of drivers after the pit stops had come through, was there any moment where you thought you couldn't win that race, or did you always know that you had it in you?
At some point, I was questioning a little bit if I was going to get past Alessio and Josh, because especially Josh was taking so long to get past the people who pitted 2-3 laps earlier. So I was getting a little bit worried when he was taking so long. Initially, I thought he was just waiting for the right opportunity, but I think he just probably didn't have the pace at the time to get past. So it wasn't easy. Let's keep it that way.
Indeed, yeah. There were a few moments of, there were a lot of moments of contact between various drivers. A couple of them involving yourself. I mean, did it feel like a lot more chaotic than usual? Were there any moments where you got really nervous or thought maybe some people went over the line, or was it all basically okay?
No, I got through everyone clean. I had a small moment with Josh in turn 1. I think also with Alessio, but not with anyone else. Nothing major, nothing race ending or giving someone damage. So I think I had a very fun race, battling other people wise. I think best one was with Ben Sabo. That one was amazing. So yeah, GG to him.
Yeah, and it was a great fun race to watch as well. That's all the questions from me, so thank you for the interview. Milky, you have any further questions?
I don't have anything to add. Just congrats, Jano, on yet another win, and well, thanks for putting on a great show for us.
Yeah, no problem.
Right, next we have the other Mercedes driver of Patrick Cruti, and Patrick, so close to your second race win of the season. What were your emotions like on those final few laps?
Yeah, it was very close. Completely didn't expect to be in that position again in the season, but yeah, especially on the track that I was not the strongest, and yeah, I was just leading whole way till lap 27. Yeah, I just didn't have much grip in the tires, and also had to save the tires because I was near the zone of the puncture, and actually I got a puncture when I crossed the finish line. So this is the luckiest race ever with these tires. But yeah, I mean, there was a chance for a win for sure, but once Jarno passed a few people behind, when he was P3, I knew that he will be very fast at the end, and he will easily pass the second guy. I don't know who was in the second place at that time, but he passed him, and yeah, I knew that I have no chance with the tires and not much ERS, so I just let him by to make sure I can finish in the P2 because yeah, last few laps were not easy with the tires I had because I pitted at lap 7, so 22 laps on the hards was not great.
Well, you say that Bahrain's not one of your best tracks, but I'm looking back at your results. P4 last time here at Bahrain on the short layout, your second best result of the season. Now a P2 here. One thing that I do want to ask, compared to your Austria win, which of the two races has felt better to you? Which one do you think was your better performance?
I think this one, yeah, because in whole race I felt very, very comfortable with car. Didn't make major mistakes, and yeah, in Austria at the beginning I feel a little bit worse than here. But if I won today, this one would have been way, way better because on the same kind of strategy to beat other guys would have been absolutely amazing. But still, P2 and beat 18 other guys, it's still mega. So yeah, I think I'm just happy to be in P2. But yeah, win was there for sure.
Well, you beat 18 other guys, and crucially, you beat Alvaro Carreton, you beat Daniela Haddad, which means that you get P2 in the championship. So, a huge, huge congratulations for that one, Patrick. And will we be seeing you for season 15?
Well, I think so. I need a bit of a break, but I think I'll come back. And what I need to do is to sort out my pace a bit, and I can fight for the championship. Because I know I can do the job in the races. I just need more pace. So yeah, that's what I need. Happy.
Well, congratulations again, Patrick. I think there was only one race this season where you finished outside of the top 10. So unluckily...
I would have finished in the points again because I had a puncture. So yeah.
Oh yes, of course. I forgot about that one. By the way, Patrick. Congrats on your P2 here. Congrats on the P2 in the championship, and thanks for joining us for an interview.
Polska Górą. Thank you. Polska.
Polska Górą.
I didn't realize that was a meme even in sim racing as well. I just thought it was just for me in League of Legends. I knew Polska Górą from Agro Rogue, but
the only time you ever see that one Twitch emote as well with the little red guy with the thumbs up.
See, it's a shame that we're on YouTube because now I can't see it just getting spammed in the chat.
Indeed,
but Jacob, that's everything. Any final words before we wrap up not only the stream but the season?
Well, thank you to you for commentating alongside me all this season.
Pleasure.
Thank you to ORL for allowing us to do it, and thank you to everyone watching for watching us do it. It's been a pleasure, and I've very much enjoyed casting on what has probably been the most competitive grid in League Racing ever.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, been an absolute pleasure to commentate on the likes of Jarno Otmir, Alvaro Carreton. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. So, yeah, thanks again, Jacob, for joining me. Thanks to ORL for having both of us here. If you haven't already, do make sure to follow ORL on Twitter at @team_ORL. You can follow my wonderful co-caster Jacob Allender Hancocks at jhancockscaster and myself at Milky Serial 7073. Before the very final time this season, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Season 15 is just around the corner. Make sure to stay tuned for updates on that and even to sign up, whether that is in the Split A Championship or the Split B Championship. For myself and Jacob, stay fast and good night.